A village-like community. We're more than a community, it is a village.
I absolutely love living in the Sunset because it's part of the city, but because it's close to the ocean, it feels like you're not living in a city.
This is our ancestral home. When you hear of your ancestral home, you're thinking maybe centuries of home, but for the last 5 decades, it's been here in the outer Sunset. And I think a lot of people would be disappointed if we had to let this go. There's a lot of blood, sweat and tears gone into this place.
Oh, it's a flat, no. It's funny, when I first moved here in 89, 90, the Sunset was like looked down upon, because it was always foggy out there. If there's an earthquake, it's going to go under the sea, and the tsunami's going to hit it.
The Sunset is a nice, safe place to be, and I think that's what we all aspire to, live in safe neighborhoods, clean, and obviously places that we can go to eat, enjoy, and see a few other people. I mean, that's what living is all about,
We're one of the last spots in the city where you can really experience what the city was like back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
It's got a nice neighborhood feel to it. I know all my neighbors in that area. There's beautiful parks. They're all small parks, but beautiful parks to go walk in. And lots of hills to get your exercise in.
I think there's a part of us that live here that know that when you're here, it's special, and it's looked upon as kind of like of San Francisco.
There's a sort of chilled atmosphere out here. It's an evolving, that's the word I'd use to describe it.
It's a very special space.
People come here because of that. They want to see that.
I lived in Inner Sunset when I first came here, and then I went all around the city and I came back.
The Sunset District has always had a reputation of being sleepier side of town, but yet it's not so much sleepy as it is a little mellower than the rest of the city. And I think the beach community vibe lends itself well to that.
I don't want to be in the sexy part of the city. I mean, I've never even lived there. I don't know what the difference would be, but I'm proud to be in the Sunset. It's who we are.
Back in 1994, I moved into Golden Gate Heights area of the Sunset, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the outer Sunset until my first child was enrolled in the preschool. I co-founded the Sunset Mercantile back in 2014 with a friend. I dreamt up the idea of Sunset Mercantile based on conversations I was having with other moms who, once our kids were getting into elementary school, we started daydreaming, so to speak, of what we could be doing with our time outside, like what else, following some of our passions. And speaking to some moms that had business ideas, but the question of where do you start these things? It's expensive to start a brick and mortar. It'd be really great if we could create some kind of pop-up. I started reflecting on the fact that if there's these other moms that have people that want to start up a little business, it'd be great to do it in a pop-up sense so that you're not so committed and you can do it while parenting. And as I was talking about a pop-up market, a lot of people suggested incorporating a farmer's market, that the neighborhood really needs a farmer's market. And so I thought, sure, let's throw in a farmer's market, not knowing how difficult it was to start a farmer's market. I really love being able to dream up these events and programs, and I love giving this gift to the community, hearing and seeing how happy it makes the community to have these kind of events, from the children to the parents. It's special, and it is a creative process, especially now with COVID, trying to create ways to engage and activate the community outside of the house has been a really fun challenge and a desire of mine to try to bring some wellness. It's hard to fathom leaving the sunset. It's really a part of me, and I've become a part of it.
Thanks so much. Huh. So.
I grew up in Belmont, California, but I went to school here in San Francisco. So I kind of grew up in the Sunset practically, just from school and work. I work at Henry's House of Coffee. When I was a kid, my father purchased the business from his uncle in 1983. And I was in kindergarten at the time. So I basically grew up in the business. And I remember as a 12-year-old, it was like the worst. I hated it because my dad, he'd wake me up on Saturdays trying to watch Scooby-Doo and He-Man, and he had other plans for me. My dad was like the grandfather. The parents would come inside with their kids, and my dad would love these little children like they were like me, giving them cookies, kind of giving the mom a break while she's trying to have her breakfast sandwich. And that's when I realized, that's what makes dad successful. It's not that, yes, the coffee's good, of course, but he's become like this paternalistic figure in the community. And that's when I was like, you know what? That needs to be more of the focus. Obviously, the coffee shop is here, but we're doing things, yes, we're running a business, but we're more than that. We're definitely here for the community, and little things like that, I think, is why people love coming back. I love being a Sunset resident. I think there's a part of us that live here that know that when you're here, it's special, and it's looked upon as kind of like an of San Francisco, right? But when you're here, you love it. It's quiet, it's quaint, beautiful parks. The beach is right down the street. The vendors have been around for a really long time. And that feel for me is what I love, I don't want to be in the sexy part of the city. I mean, I've never even lived there. I don't know what the difference would be, but I'm proud to be in the Sunset. It's who we are. And a lot of the residents that are here have been here for a long time. You don't get a lot of turnover, so you build those relationships, and I'd much rather have that.
I grew up in the Parkside Sunset District of San Francisco. I was born in 1973, born into a family of butchers. My father came here from Italy in 1946. My mother came here in 1967. I come from generations of butchers. My father was a butcher, my uncle was a butcher, my brothers were butchers, one of my cousins were butchers, and we all grew up in the same business. I was very fortunate to be born into the family and the business that I was born in and the area that I was born in. My father started this business in 1954. When my father opened up this butcher shop, there was 9 butcher shops on Terraville Street alone. Now we are one of the last 2 independent union butcher shops in the city. We have customers that are 2nd and 3rd generation.
Jimmy, you can make your way around if you like. Okay, thank you. Here's Jimmy. Former fireman in San Francisco.
Yeah, show your muscles, man.
World champion. You YouTube him.
I think that it's very remarkable that anybody wants to do this kind of hard work. We also have a very sense of family. We're a very close-knit group of people. Many of our employees work for us for a very, very long time.
It's the camaraderie, the people. You know, it's hard work, but it's fun work too. We do the same thing every day, but every day is a little different. I had to say goodbye to a customer I've been waiting on for 30 years last week. A little rough.
The community, our community is 100% everything to our store. You grow old watching them grow old. And you know, it's community. Everything is community based. Our business is community based. That's what makes it unique. We are a corporation by terms, but we're not a corporation. We're a very small shop. We're a family shop. We're a small shop, and we are as part of the city as anybody else. And we're fortunate to have that. We are really, really fortunate to have the community that supports us. When you're waiting on a customer that held you as a baby, it's remarkable. You know, it's really something. You know, you feel like you're, you know, very close to those people. And like I said, watching people grow old and die is a hard part of our business. You know, because they're friends, lifelong friends.
I'm president of the United Irish Cultural Centre. Although I've been living in the States for 24 years, I came here in 1997 as an immigrant from Ireland. I grew up in southwest of Ireland in County Limerick in a small little village called Broadford. The United Irish Cultural Centre, it's a 501c3 non-profit organisation. Last year I became vice president, and this year I became president. Well, the doors of the Irish Centre opened in 1975, and this past 2020 would have been our 45th anniversary, 45 years on 45th Avenue. We had a real, you know, marketing thing about it. And so a group of really innovative people got together, really determined, and basically spread the word and collected the money to buy 5 lots for houses along here at the corner of 45th and Bhojwani, just off a sloat. And essentially the Irish Centre came into existence. On a typical year, this is home base for the Irish American community for birthday celebrations, memorials, Irish club celebrations, Gaelic Athletic Association, Rebel Cork dinner dance, the Kerry dinner dance. So these are all big events on the social calendar that attract a lot of people here to the centre. Of course, we have the library as well, where we have a lot of connections to the world, the global village, so to speak, through the internet. We get sometimes requests because there are some gems in the library here that are not anywhere else in the United States or the world. They're kind of once-off items. This is our ancestral home. When you hear of your ancestral home, you're thinking maybe centuries of home, but for the last 5 decades it's been here in the outer Sunset. And I think a lot of people would be disappointed if we had to let this go. There's a lot of blood, sweat and tears gone into this place, and to be respectful for what has gone before us, I still think there's a place for an Irish American community centre in the outer Sunset. There isn't an avenue that doesn't have an Irish American connection. And there's a great sense of community. So the Sunset is a nice, safe place to be, you know. And I think that's what we all aspire to, live in safe neighbourhoods, clean, and obviously places that we can go to eat, enjoy and see a few other people. I mean, that's what living is all about, you know.
I grew up in Ireland. I moved to the US about 20 years ago.
I grew up mostly in Washington, D.C.
Well, this is my studio. This is where I work almost full time from this studio. I also, when I collaborate on projects with Colette, we go between this studio and her studio at her home.
Well, this is the design for the front of this housing complex in San Mateo, and each one of these little squares is actually this size.
So it's for this entranceway. So it's a glass entranceway, and this area around the side of it will be tiled. The first project that we worked on together was the 16th Avenue tile staircase in the Sunset.
The one at Moraga.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of thrown together.
Yes,
for the
we met
16th
through the Moraga stairway.
Yeah.
We didn't know each other
At all, no. I had just moved here the year before, and they had asked us individually to come up with designs, as well as a number of other people, and they whittled it down to the two of us.
Yeah, we didn't know each other, so we had no idea if it was going to work out or not.
But it did. And that was the first staircase of that kind, of that type in the city, I guess in the country.
Well, there was a woman named Jessie Audette who lived a few blocks away from there. She had recently moved to San Francisco from Rio de Janeiro, where she had been for 5 years. And there's a huge, huge tiled staircase there, much longer and wider than the one that we did. It was done by one individual guy who worked on it for 12 years. Jessie, for exercise, was running up and down this stairway every day, and she started to think about how great it would be if it was tiled. And of course, she had no idea how complicated an undertaking this would end up being. But she teamed up with Alice Yee Xavier, who lives in the house next door to the stairway. Alice has lived in San Francisco her whole life, and she's a real powerhouse. She knows everyone, and she's very, very active in the community. So the two of them started talking to neighbors, soliciting contributions for the idea, and of course those people who contributed early on were pretty brave because they didn't really know that it was ever going to happen.
Yeah.
It had no city support. There was no government organization behind it. It was just neighbors getting together
and donating money. So they collected a lot of money through donations, and you got your name on a tile for a donation. I think altogether that 16th Avenue project took about a year, but it was spaced out over a longer period of time. It was community members who came together and decided to do it. And they were very strong groups, you know, they met.
And became stronger because the process was so arduous. And it lasted so long that friendships formed. There are a lot of personal stories that are intertwined with both of those stairways because there are very special meanings to each of the tiles.
I got a lovely email not long after the 16th Avenue tile steps from a person that I didn't know, and he said that during, he lives in the area in that neighborhood, and while the work was going on, his wife had been very ill and then she died, and he didn't realize that his friends had gotten together and bought a little tile with her name on it and had it installed, and he didn't see it until it was there. And he just wrote to say how meaningful that was as a place that he could go and visit. So when you go there in the summertime at sunset, just before sunset, and there's no fog obviously, the reflection of the colors in the sunset sky are reflected onto the staircase, and it actually turns gold.